We're going to try this recording today. I was having a difficult time with it last week for our call with the DoubleTree in Wichita, so we'll see if it works out. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So as you may have seen in the update for our call today, there is one major thing that I want to go over today as our training item, and that is taking your GS2 or your guest voice or guest satisfaction or Medallia or whatever the case may be, but taking those and coming up with the talking points for the weekly operations or the monthly owner's report. So how many of you on the call are the people who your GMs go to ask for the review rating or your meta score or any talking points about those scores?
This is Brian at the Park Place. I do our MOR report to Greenwood, and so we do all of the GS2 information from that. So he reads it, but me and him go over it, and then I put that into the report each month.
Awesome. And I know that we have some other people who weren't able to be on the call today. I know actually usually Kendra or Brandy, one of you are the people who reaches out to me most regularly to get your reports because you're getting them in and done on time, which I love. But I know we have a number of people. Sorry, what was that? Okay, may have just been some ghostly ambient noise. But I know that we do have a number of other people on our Reputation Champion crew that are the people who are go-tos for coming up with this content. Now, when we look at this, it's easy to see just a lot of numbers, whether you're looking at your GS2 report or whether you're in Medallia, and bear with me just a moment, I'm going to have to log back in, but whether you are in Medallia or whether you are in your GS2 report, it's easy to look at it and just see a bunch of numbers. We want to be able to kind of disseminate that information and come up with a few like hits, a few of like what your key hits would be to be able to give to the management team and executive team to put together those monthly owner or weekly owner reports. So I'm going to go ahead and start out with Revinate because all of you have the opportunity save for one of our properties, all of you have the opportunity to receive the GS2 report and pull through this information. It's the most equally and most universally available tool that we have across the portfolio. So I'll give you a breakdown of the few things that I look at. So the first is on the GS2 overview page, and I look for a few different things. So first and foremost is review rating, which is our meta score. And that's what we would have in the monthly owner's report under Metascore. So I look at the review rating, and if there are any drastic changes from the month prior or anything like that, you can kind of, sometimes there is an operational reason why that happened, and that's really what those points are in those monthly owner's reports, is to be able to explain why you've seen an increase, a decrease, or no change at all. So review rating, of course, is the first one that we would be looking at, and oftentimes we all experience some kind of seasonal change, right? You go from the springtime where you might start ramping up for the summer to the summertime where you're slammed with sports teams for young kids and large groups, and they're in for a short period of time, and turnaround is really high, and housekeeping is working like crazy, and the weather is crazy, so the HVAC units are cranking, and they're probably loud, and they might not be working. Anyway, there are certain periods of time during the year where you know you might be experiencing some opportunities or potential opportunities with guests. So you can kind of explain sometimes where you might see fluctuations and changes in the review just because of that. The other thing that I look at is the percentage of positive reviews. So again, with the review rating overall, we want to look at any, over the course of the year, any large fluctuations that could happen because of business demands. But with a positive review rating, what I'm looking for is this is most closely aligned with most of our properties' overall satisfaction scores. Because the positive review rating, and we've talked about this before, but the positive review rating only counts the 4- and 5-star reviews in our online world. And most of our brands are only counting 9s and 10s on the internal guest voice or heartbeat or Medallia or whatever verbiage your brand uses to describe it, they're only counting 9s and 10s. So there should be a closer alignment with positive review percentage and your overall satisfaction. So if I take a look here, I have October 1st through the 31st, our positive review rating was 91% for the Henry. I can take a look over here at our satisfaction section, and it will give me our GSS information, and I can look at it from a table perspective, and it gives me my satisfaction at a glance, and I'm going to choose previous month. So it looks like I've got my October, I'm sorry, that's August, not October. I'll do my last 30 days. Let's just try it that way and see how we come up. So this will give us our total benchmark for the year, as well as our overall satisfaction, which is intent to return is one of the things that they're looking at right now. But overall satisfaction is another really good measure. And actually, let me just see if I can do this with the breakdown by month instead. I'm going to do it with current year month split, and this will give me my month-by-month breakdown. So this shows me that in October, my intent to return to property was 74. My overall satisfaction was 70. Now again, this counts only 9s and 10s, and the overall, the Metascore positive review rating, the positive review rating on Revinate counts 4s and 5s, so that would be 7, 8, 9, and 10. So you can see that looking at an 80 and a 90 on that scale is it's more closely aligned than a 4.55, which would be like an 85 or a 90 ranking over here. So it's a little bit more closely aligned. So that's where I like to draw the comparison on positive reviews, is how it compares to your internal surveys, your guest voice surveys, your heartbeat surveys, all that stuff, SALT surveys. Does that all make sense so far? Any questions?
No.
Okay. I usually ignore recommended and TripAdvisor popularity index out of the gate, because the TripAdvisor popularity index in a lot of our marketplaces, you're in a secondary or a tertiary marketplace. What that means is that a lot of the properties in your competitive set are in other cities. So the Henry, as an example, is the #1 hotel in Dearborn. However, in their comp set, they have a number of properties that are in downtown Detroit. So looking at their TripAdvisor popularity ranking against those other competitors, I might be showing that I'm #1 in Dearborn, but I might see that I've got the Westin book that's like 13 in downtown Detroit. So it doesn't always give you a clear picture of where you stand. So don't worry about that for the MOR report. I do like to consider the number of reviews and where they are coming from. Again, the number of reviews can be indicative oftentimes of the fluctuations in business. So if you are going through a time of year where you're experiencing a lot of third-party or short-term stays, so people staying 1 or 2 nights, as opposed to, let's say, in the fall, you might be experiencing a lot of business travel Monday to Friday, and extended stays from Friday to Sunday for weddings, or Friday to Monday for weddings. If you're seeing those longer stays and bigger blocks of time, it would wager, or it would calculate that the amount of people that you have, or the number of stays that you have, may have gone down, even though the money coming in might be increased, or the rooms might be higher, but the number of stays you have might be smaller. So that's often what it's usually a percentage of those that those reviews come off of. So if that base is lower, then the number of reviews you're getting might be lower as well. So a good example of this is Ebony. Not too long ago, a few months back, when we had gone over their reports, one of the big things that had impacted them was they were getting buses, tour group buses, coming in from Canada, right, Ebony? Am I mistaken with that? So they were getting tour group buses coming in from Canada. So that's like 30-plus rooms, oftentimes, with those big group buses, and none of those people have email addresses on file, and they're staying together in a room, and they're here for a long period of time, potentially. Or another good example is conferences, where you have a conference in, and you might have your setup team coming in for the week or 2 weeks prior to the conference, and it's a buyout. In periods like that where you've got people staying for a longer period of time, or they're with a group and they don't have any email addresses on file, there's less of a likelihood that you would be getting potentially reviews from them. So you might see a dip in that. So I like to pay attention to that as well. So those are the biggies that I pay attention to on the GS2 overview. I also do like to see where my review rating stacks up against the competition. So I'm looking at review rating and how it compares to any operational changes, positive review percentage and how it compares to our internal surveys. And I'm looking at the number of reviews, and again, considering if it's a massive increase from the period prior or a decrease from the period prior, were there some business changes that impacted that? And then within the competition overview, I'm looking at my review rating compared to my competitive set. Any questions about that at all?
No.
Okay, cool. So again, if we take a look over on the Medallia side, if you have Medallia, and you, I know our IHG, Hilton, and Marriott properties do, it looks a little bit different brand to brand because each brand has customized the surveys and each brand has customized the platform to their needs. So it can be a little different brand to brand, but the general functionality is pretty similar. So I often will go to the satisfaction tab, and I prefer to look at it from a table view. Particularly when I'm, again, trying to pull out those specific data points for the monthly owners report or weekly owners report. So you can take a look within here for survey responses. So it's good to, you also have the option to see how many internal surveys you got during a period of time as well. So if it was a drop-off, as it was here, you went from, or yeah, it was a drop-off, you went from 169 to 146. You'll notice here we had 66 reviews in October, down 21% from September. So we saw that same trend across both. So moving on from our GS2 overview into review analysis, this I basically just take a look and see where we stand year to date. So this month versus year to date. So we have 771 reviews year to date. That's fine, not a big deal. Review rating year to date is good to look at because you want to make sure that this month or quarter or whatever the case may be hasn't thrown you off for where you are for the year overall. So again, down here, I also look at positive reviews to see where we are year to date, and then I would compare it with where we are year to date. So current year month split, we're at 72.5 for intent to recommend, 69.7 for overall satisfaction, 93% for positive review rating here. So a little bit higher on the external surveys, so something for us to kind of take a look at and just consider. So we're not off our mark for the year. 93% positive reviews is a great number to have on our external sites. So again, those are the big areas that I look at, is the number of reviews compared to year to date, the review rating for this month compared to year to date, and then our positive reviews compared to year to date. The other cool thing that this brings up for us is you take a look at your comp index. If any of you have ever looked at a STAR report, a Smith Travel report, this is kind of like our, oh my goodness, the word is escaping me now, our RevPAR index or our revenue per available room index or any one of those indexes. It basically takes our comp set of ourselves and 5 other properties in most cases. Some of you have more than that in your comp sets. But it basically takes all of those properties, averages out in this case, the number of reviews, and then assigns how many each property should have for it to be equal. So if there were 100 reviews amongst 5 hotels, I should have gotten 20 of those reviews. If I got 25 of those reviews, I have greater than 100% competitive index. So compared to my competitors, I got a bigger piece of the pie than everybody else did. So that's nice to see. So you can see here within our positive reviews, even though we can see against the brand, so again, this is all of our other autograph collection properties, what the brand benchmark is, I can see that even though against the brand I might be sitting better or worse than the brand average, that compared to my direct competitors in my marketplace, I'm doing better than they are on average for that positive review index. So as an aggregate of all of them, I'm doing more than my fair share. Does that all make sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay, so again, those are the areas I like to look at. The number of reviews, just to see where we stand, the review rating, to see where we stand year to date, and then I also take a look at the positive review percentage and compare it to where we are on our internal surveys. And then more specifically, I like to look at the competitive index because, again, we might be standing in a certain place within the brand, but it's nice to see that within the local market we're performing well. So this is a particularly good area to go to if you've had a bad month in SALT or a bad month in GSS or a bad month in any of those other branded reviews. You can take a look and say, yeah, we might not have done as well on the brand side. However, within our local marketplace, we were killing it. So a good little way to have a positive spin on that. Moving on to sentiment analysis, I love the sentiment analysis report. It's particularly helpful in properties that are undergoing major changes. So let's say you have a pool renovation. Let's say you're going through a winter period where you blew a bunch of pipes or something terrible happened like that. This is a great way to see basically the light at the end of the tunnel. So even if your surveys take a dip, if you don't see any negative trending comments, it's a good thing. Oftentimes that will mean that something like that, whatever happened in that month or that period was an anomaly, that there haven't been enough mentions about that previously to have it pop up as something that's trending. And the same side, it's nice to see when you've got positive trends as well. So staff quality was mentioned 21 times, ease of check-in mentioned 6, and the quality of the Henry bed in the rooms was mentioned 6 times as well. So all really good things. And then you can also take a look here that the only one that was neutral positive, which means that there might be opportunity to make it even better, was service, parking, and valet. Now, at the Henry, Kevin, I'm sure you can attest to this, during the winter months when you have to park out on the opposite side of the parking lot, you'll often see parking and valet take a dip in service. So you can expect that during the colder, rainier, wintry months, snowier, icier, awful months, you'll see a dip in parking and valet. And the case is that's often the case with really any of your properties that have exterior parking in cold weather climates. People are less likely to be happy about parking if they had to walk across an icy parking lot to get to the front desk. And that just is what it is. There are only certain things that we can do to remediate any issues or frustrations around weather. We have little control over that. And oftentimes, things like this, where it's a neutral negative, as we've talked about before, those sentiments get graded on a scale. So was it a very good comment? Was it a good comment? Was it a neutral, negative, or very negative comment? So we can see where those sorts of shifts happen. Again, on the flip side of that, if you do have a number of negative trending comments, you know that there are areas where you can target. So it's good to be able to say something like, if you had a lot of pool comments, like the DoubleTree in Charlottesville just went through a renovation in their pool. So for a period of time, they had some really negative comments about the pool. And the renovation took some time, so we saw a dip in the review rating. We saw mentions about the pool being closed and the noise because of it. And then shortly after the renovation was complete, we saw it ping-pong right up to positive trends. So the comment had been there, but the sentiment at that time went from negative to positive because it was a new pool, it was an amazing space, really open, welcome, friendly, quiet, nice, all of that stuff. So again, it helps you see the light at the end of the tunnel and take a positive spin on potential dips that you've seen. Any questions about the sentiment analysis here? So again, you always want to tie into whatever you've got going on operationally. And then you have the opportunity within Medallia to be able to do those same things and see some of where those clouds are coming from. So you can see within a lot of our properties have a problem tracker, so you can see the summary, the counts, anything like that, which is basically just very simply, did you experience a problem? And oftentimes that can give you some insight into what sentiments people might have been saying, and they also offer sentiment clouds on most of our properties as well. So you can see, you can filter for particular feedback or particular words that are coming up. So if you want to keep an eye on parking, you can search for parking, and all of the feedback will come up that mentions it. Voices also appears here. It's very similar to the sentiment cloud in Revinate, where the smaller the word, the fewer times it was mentioned. The bigger the word, the more it was mentioned. And then you can see specifically any of the, so if I click on room, I'm going to be able to see the voices that have come up for room. I'm going to give that a minute. It seems to be taking its sweet time. So that's sentiment analysis. Any other questions about how we might want to utilize sentiment analysis in the monthly owners report? Okay. The other area that I like to pay attention to is review responses for obvious reasons, partly because you are all reputation champions and I love to see that you're performing well. But most importantly, again, is I want to see how we stand up against the competition. It's great if all of the Renaissance hotels in the world are at an 80% or greater response rating, but it's not great if all of those Renaissance hotels aren't in my marketplace. It helps with the brand overall, but for the general traveler who's coming in who may or may not be a Marriott Rewards member, who really doesn't care about what brand that they're staying at, they just want to stay at a good hotel, that's what I care most about, is to know that yes, I'm standing up against the brands, but if I'm in a marketplace where the other brands I'm with are killing it, I know I need to up my game. So I take a look at our overall review rating and look at our comp stats. So you can see right here that I have 83% coverage, which is a really strong number, where our goal is 80%, of course. And it compares the competitive set at a like puny, disappointing 24%. So you can see that they're paying attention to TripAdvisor, but this is a great trick. So Marriott verified reviews, which are only for Marriott hotels, the other property that's a Marriott hotel is only covering 24% of their reviews. So if I take a look here at the overview, you can see the Dearborn Inn is the only other Marriott branded property that I have within my competitive set. So compared to all of my other properties, or directly compared to my other Marriott property, I know that they're not paying attention to those Marriott verified reviews. So this is also helpful for IHG because you have your IHG guest reviews, and those will appear the same way. If you're a Holiday Inn and you've got a Crown in your marketplace, you can see how you're performing compared to that Crown, particularly because IHG focuses so much on those IHG guest responses as well. So again, a great way to see where you stack up against the competition. So we maintained 83% review response compared to the competitive set at only 24%. The Dearborn Inn, competitor of the Henry Hotel, only responded to 24% of their Marriott verified reviews. So again, great way to add some additional flesh and meat to those details. Any other questions about that at all? No? Okay, so back over on the Medallia side, I'm just pulling up within my responses menu and the submenu, I'm using the filter section, and I'm selecting room, which was a big bubble. It looks like there was a negative one, or a negative review that came through about the room. We've got some other ones, but we do have some really nice positive ones here. Our room was great. Roll away, not delivered to room. So it looks like there's some opportunities there. Now this is a good one because these were positive trending comments, or rather these were negative trending comments, but they're coming up in positive reviews. So it's an opportunity for us to dig into those a little bit more and say, were there some hiccups that we experienced that we can fix from an operational side? Or alternately, are there successes that we need to celebrate? So as an example, you might see parking as a negative trend, but you might still see a 5-point rating. If you go through and pull up all of those parking, it might have said I had to walk across the parking lot. The front desk was amazingly accommodating at delivering our luggage for us, or they had a car out to bring us to the front desk, or whatever the case may be. If we can show that while this was a negative comment, we had some great service successes because of it, it's a really great story to tell to ownership. So those are those two big areas for us within there. So again, within Medallia, we looked at the satisfaction area and took a look at our rankings for the month. We also took a look at responses, which is much more closely aligned with sentiment. So we were able to take a look at how people's comments were impacting their scores. And then again, of course, within here within the GS2 report, we took a look at a few things on the overview. We looked at some areas within review analysis and sentiment analysis and review responses. Again, because a lot of our properties are in mixed marketplaces, as you can see here, I don't worry as much about the TripAdvisor Popularity Index. It's much more relevant for cities and downtown marketplaces. The Holiday Inn is a good example of that. All of your properties, even though there's that one that's in the Detroit desert that's completely surrounded by other towns and cities, but is a pocket of Detroit, all of those are relevant. So it's worth it in those cases to mention where you stand within the TripAdvisor Popularity Index from the GS2 report. Any other questions, comments, thoughts, or reflections about all of that? Okay. In that case, we're going to move on to roundtable, and we'll wrap up for the day. I had Kevin on first. So for those of you who haven't been, if there's anybody on who hasn't been on the call before, what we do during roundtable is you'll mention a success or a best practice that you have, something to do with combating negative reviews or service successes that you've had or big positive changes you've had at the property. So a success or a best practice, and then a question that you might have, something you want to learn more about, something that you need some help with, or an opportunity, so something that you're experiencing a problem with at the property. So again, a best practice or success and an opportunity or a question. Kevin, what do we have?
So something good about the hotel. Lately we've our scores have been dropping a little bit, but I have a plan in implementing that we're gonna if there's a guest that's not too happy when they're checking in, setting up an amenity, even if it's just a card, just to say, hey, we're here for you if you need anything. And then as far as a question, I mean, is there anything that you would recommend as far as boosting our GSS scores?
Actually, you're already doing it. I agree wholeheartedly with the welcome amenity. I think that's actually something that I might have, there have been a number of properties that's come up about recently. I think Ryan might have been one of the people that I spoke to about it as well. But one very successful thing that I had implemented at another property, one of the Renaissances I've previously worked at, was just that, a welcome card upon arrival. So we had our front desk team had a, within reason, of course, I understand that business demands are sometimes changing and we always want to be flexible to that, but they had a goal of sending up, depending on the night, between 5 and 10 cards to guests in their rooms, just to comment on something that an interaction that they'd had upon arrival. It challenges your front desk to have that additional level of connection and service, which can be super helpful. And we saw an increase in our overall satisfaction scores, an increase in our recognized as a Marriott Rewards or Elite member scores, and we also saw a drastic increase in the number of guest names, or I'm sorry, staff names that were mentioned in comments, because you're keeping that front of mind. And it also shows that you care. So if somebody has an issue, they can give you a call and say, hey, blah, 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 this was an issue. I'll give you a good example of that as well, is within within review responses, it's a great idea, or the best practice is to always share your contact information when it's available. On third-party sites like Expedia and Hotels.com and Booking, you're not allowed to. But on Google and Google and TripAdvisor are the two big ones that I would want to make sure that I was sharing my contact information on. If it was a negative survey and there was an issue that needed follow-up, I would include my phone number. If it was just a positive survey that was like overwhelmingly positive and I wanted to welcome them back, I always included my email address. And it's been a couple of years since I've responded to any properties reviews, save for the one here and there when somebody's out of the office. And I still receive calls up until this weekend I still receive calls from guests who see my contact information on those and would have left a negative survey or filled out a negative response, but thought to reach out instead because it appeared that we cared. So I agree wholeheartedly with your welcome amenity or welcome cards. I think that's fantastic. And if you need any support with that, please let me know. And also just heading off those review responses by reaching out to people online and sharing your contact information. One other cool thing that we're doing, just to give all of you the heads up, we're going to be having demo calls for all of the general managers for 2 platforms, Kipsu, which is a text messaging service, as well as Trust You, which is another text messaging service. For ease of use, thinking of the front desk, I like Trust You better, having been at the desk and wanting to make sure that I have a tool that's reasonable for me and my guests and for other departments to collaborate with. But that's another great way to head off negative reviews. So we're looking at that as a portfolio-wide solution. So good question, Kevin. And does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was perfect. Thank you.
Cool, you're welcome. Anything else from Dearborn? No? Okay. All right, Ebony, how's everything in downtown Detroit?
Everything is good, Emily. I don't know. I really don't have anything because it's been so quiet. Like, we haven't been getting too many reviews. I think maybe 2, 3 every few days, really. So, I don't know. The month of November has been pretty quiet.
That's weird to hear. Just so everybody is aware, Ebony is, I think, what are you at for the year? Like 1,200 reviews for the year?
Yeah, something like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an obscene number. So the Holiday Inn Express in downtown Detroit is one of our top review getters. So Ebony is the person who responds to all of those. So they're at 1,200 for the year. We're not even done with it yet. Over 1,200 now. So a slow week for her is like still a busy week for the rest of us.
Yeah, I mean, like, if we do, the reviews we do get, like if they're from Booking.com, they typically just give a rating. Like, they don't actually leave like a response or anything. So it's been pretty quiet.
Cool. Great. That's good to hear. Well, since it's a little bit quieter, are there any questions or training that you'd like to, that you think would be helpful to prepare ourselves for 2018 or anything like that?
Well, actually, on the flip side, like, the review side has been really quiet, but we've been getting hammered on the surveys. Mm-hmm. So, and, you know, Scott does the surveys. But as far as training, no, nothing specifically.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Brian and Brittany, how's everything going in Minneapolis?
Well, I'll start so we don't talk over each other, I guess. As far as this current month, September, October, we did very well. We saw a high number of surveys and increased our scores, working towards a goal of 67 for what we're trying to do for the quarter. Unfortunately, November has taken quite a turn. We have a 2-pipe system for our hotel, so it's been about 80, 90 degrees on the floors, and then about 50 degrees in our atrium. And though engineering has done their best to try and combat this, it's just something that kind of caught us for a couple weeks that we're still working against. So we're around the 50s in our scores currently, and still seeing positive comments on service and how the agents are handling compensating guests and such. But as you can imagine, sleeping in a room that's that hot, with no air conditioner in the room, you can only really open the window. It's just really kind of put us behind the 8 ball a little bit. But again, just trying to work through that and making sure that myself and Brittany, on any of the responses we give, especially the ones that go posted on the internet, that we're staying positive, letting them know we're working on it. And mostly just taking the hit and saying, we want to make this better, and not trying to give any false pretenses to people that that's what's going on, but just letting them know that we're working on it and we don't want them to lose faith in the hotel.
Great. And Brian, that's a great best practice. Thank you for bringing that up. Oftentimes it can be really difficult for us when you're getting negative reviews, particularly if it's something that you don't necessarily have control over. It might have been the way the hotel was built or the weather in the area, but the best recommendation for that is exactly what you said. Stay positive. So if there were mentions of good service, focus on that first. Thank you so much for sharing the positive feedback about our front desk. So glad they were able to accommodate you. And then to be exactly what you said, be honest, take the hit. I can appreciate how frustrating it is to not have the level of temperature or comfort that you need in the room. It is of the utmost importance to us please know that we're doing everything that we can about it. We welcome the opportunity to regain your trust during your next day. So awesome, awesome, awesome. Stay positive. Be honest. I love it. Brittany, how about you? How's everything going there on property from your perspective?
Good, good. I just started to, really dive into responding to reviews, and definitely what Brian said. I think it's about honesty, but then also making sure you're personable and, really switching up every response so you're not just like making it, everyone doesn't get the same, generic thing, even though we do have the templates. But and then as well, we just started diving into the Facebook reviews. So I've been, working on that, making sure that that's another platform we're using to respond as well.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That was another good best practice. How's everything going in OKC, Kendra and Brandy?
It's just Kendra. She had to step away and help the front desk.
It's okay.
We're doing good. Probably one of the best practices that we're getting a lot of likes on is when we're doing pictures of the employee or ambassador of the month and our ambassador luncheons that we've been doing each month. And then I do have a question. We just recently got our little Google tour.
Oh, yeah.
Is there a way to upload that to like brand.com and Expedia and those sites, or does it just stay on Google? It's like different videos.
I know. That's a great question. So for those of you who have gone through these before, the Google 360 tour or the it's basically just the 360-degree videos of your property, and you can walk through the sections of the property and see a 360-degree view. They're designed for use on Google. However, there are multiple other applications. I don't believe there is functionality right now for those to live on brand.com. If you're with a Hilton property, you're going to want to reach out to your e-commerce team, and I can get you the resources for that. If you are at a non-branded property or with a Marriott, sorry, let me rephrase that. If you're with a Marriott, you can probably reach out to I don't think that there's a way for them to live on the brand.com website for Marriott. I'm not sure about Hilton. I don't believe so for Marriott. But if you do have a vanity site, you can absolutely have it live there. Be aware that sometimes that can be very costly. But there are some other ways that we can utilize it as well. You can share it out on social, certain things like that. That would be good as well. So I'm glad that you want to continue using them on other sites. If you have a 360-degree tour, you'll want to reach out to your brand e-com team to see if it can be used on your brand.com website. I don't believe there's functionality right now for it to be living on those third-party sites either.
Okay.
There was another good best practice that you brought up there. I want to circle it back into the review response portion of it, which is sharing that your posts about ambassadors do very well. One other way to kind of rope that into our reviews is some of our properties have created and utilized review templates. So when you get a positive review, perhaps with an ambassador's name in it, you can create a visual, whether it be in Canva or any other way, and post that out on social. It could just be copying the post or copying the review and posting it out on social, perhaps with a photo of the ambassador saying so-and-so was mentioned. We applaud the work that they're doing. So again, it brings those two things cohesively together, those social and reputation. Anything else from OKC?
That's all I had on my list for today.
Beautiful, thank you. Shauna, how's everything in St. Paul?
We're doing pretty good. I guess we had one pretty awesome success this week. We had enough positive reviews on the Nut that we're going to be one of the 2018 best of.
Yay!
So the post about that coming up. Otherwise, not too much exciting stuff going on right now other than that.
Cool. Well, congratulations on that positive on the best of for the Knot.
Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. And I don't believe that the Knot allows us to respond to those reviews, so that's something that we just need to monitor from the sales side. And correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, I don't believe they have a response feature, do they?
I don't think they do. Our sales manager here who does all the weddings primarily pays attention to her Knot page. I don't think it lets her respond.
I agree. It's been a little bit since I logged into any of our knots, but I don't believe they do either. But that's fantastic. It's great to see that you've got that positive success. That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, was there anybody else that I missed that might have gotten on the call a little bit later? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and close down our call for the day. I'll get our meeting minutes out to you, and as soon as this call is over, I'm also going to share with you the recording for this call so that you can review it if you'd like to when you're going through the MOR, you need any pointers or guidance. And as always, don't hesitate to reach out to me and let me know if you need anything at all. Thank you all for taking the time. We'll talk again really soon.
Thank you, Emily. Bye.
You're welcome. Enjoy today.